My name is Justin and I'm with Ascend Finance. Today, I wanted to provide an inside view of what Dave Ramsey thinks about bankruptcy. I'll also point you in the direction of Dave Ramsey's 6 steps to avoid bankruptcy. Welcome to the Ascend Finance YouTube channel, where we try to take complex topics such as bankruptcy and simplify them into simple, understandable human language. To personalize it to your situation, as we understand that each individual situation is extremely unique, we also built a free bankruptcy and debt options calculator that you can take, that we included in the description below, that provides a cost estimate and the durations and allows you to compare all of your options and the costs and the pros and cons of those options specifically. Most people, though, when they think of bankruptcy, have a sour taste in their mouth. However, is bankruptcy as bad as people make it out to be? Here's what I want to cover in this video today. First, I want to go through a brief high-level overview of what bankruptcy is. Second, I want to go through if Dave Ramsey would recommend filing for bankruptcy. And third, I want to go through Dave Ramsey's 6 steps to avoid bankruptcy. Now, you're probably looking at the list here and thinking, how am I going to get through this all in one video? And so the last thing I'd recommend doing is watching a video for me for over 10 minutes. So we actually put chapters below that'll help you kind of skip around to any topic that's more relevant to you specifically. Now, before I begin and go too further, I also want you to know that we understand that your situation is unique. So my goal here is to answer all of your questions, but of course, if I don't, please comment below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Also, if it's helpful, I'd love it if you subscribe or like the video. Those are always really encouraging for us to see, and it keeps us motivated to provide additional unbiased content that'll ideally help you get out of the debt cheaper, easier, and faster. I want to jump right in, so let's get started. Dave Ramsey has established himself as a money-making guru in the United States and actually around the globe. His program of making everyday millionaires has inspired countless individuals to get out of the debt within their means and save wisely until they can live like nobody else. But what does Dave Ramsey actually think about bankruptcy? We're going to go through this in detail, but in short, Dave Ramsey thinks bankruptcy should be the very last option. It should be the last thing someone would do after finding all of the other options for not to work. In fact, he compares it to filing for divorce. Would you file for divorce after a small argument or even one big fight? For most people, the answer is probably no. Divorce happens after you tried absolutely everything you can to save the marriage. It's no secret that Dave Ramsey's passionate about personal finance. You can watch a single YouTube video or listen to one of the podcasts of his episodes, and you'll hear the conviction and the passion he has. And with so many people praising his baby steps, he has to know what he's talking about. What happens if you're a little bit further behind financially than you'd like to be? What if your debt is so massive that even the snowball method that Ramsey preaches about wouldn't help you get back up on your feet? What would Dave Ramsey say if you asked his opinion on bankruptcy? Luckily, we don't have to ask. Let's go through a bit of Dave Ramsey's background. So now, Dave Ramsey is clearly a self-made millionaire, and his goal there is to help others around the globe reach financial stability and even the abundance. He hasn't always been so successfully financially. In fact, in 1988, so years ago, Ramsey himself had to file for bankruptcy. Why? Well, though he was worth over $1 million at the time, his financial risk, mainly real estate loans, came calling and he didn't have the liquid cash to cover them. Fortunately, this forced Ramsey to file for bankruptcy, causing him and his wife to start back over. While this may have seemed like a terrible event, it actually was a reset that allowed Ramsey to realize how reckless he had been with money. After getting through his bankruptcy, Ramsey turned his financial life around and began making logical money decisions. Because of this, he has set out on a journey to help others do the same. Though the tone of his voice can be rough and his advice can be sometimes harsh, his financial wisdom is something many seek when attempting to regain control of their finances. So, if Dave Ramsey can file for bankruptcy, would he ever actually recommend it? Let's find out. So, like I said, let's touch on what bankruptcy actually is. Before touching on Ramsey's take on bankruptcy, we really want to understand what bankruptcy specifically is. There are 2 main types of bankruptcies that an individual individual could file. That would be Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. But let's go through each individually. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is often called liquidation bankruptcy. This is the case because when you file Chapter 7, your assets can be liquidated to pay back the debts. Often, though, the assets can be protected through the bankruptcy exemptions for individual states, and so you do need to qualify for the Chapter 7 as well, which you can take the bankruptcy means test to actually help you understand whether you may qualify or not. The means test considers your income level compared to that of the state's median income. Depending on where you fall, determine whether you are able to file for Chapter 7. Also, one major concern of Chapter 7 is that you'd have to sell, let's say, your house or your car. Luckily, like I was kind of talking about, is there are exemptions that you can use to help protect some of those assets you have, which include your car and home. You want to talk more, though, to a bankruptcy attorney in your area if you want to know what that might be exempt, or you can always take our bankruptcy exemptions calculator that I may link below. The other most common form of bankruptcy is Chapter 13. This form of bankruptcy is often called the wage earner's bankruptcy. Chapter earns its nickname because you're still required to take a monthly payments on your debt when you're in a 13. With Chapter 13, you would work alongside your creditors and a bankruptcy trustee to determine an amount you would pay to the court each month that would then be distributed amongst your creditors. Chapter 13 cases tend to last between 3 to 5 years, and any debt remaining after that time is eligible to be discharged. One important detail to keep in mind is that not all debt is able to be discharged. For instance, most federal student loans, taxes owed, or child support payments, or even alimony payments really never are discharged and require a full payment there. But I don't need to go too further. Now that we kind of covered a brief kind of high-level overview of bankruptcy and how it can kind of help you get out of the debt, let's kind of look at what Dave Ramsey has to say about that process specifically. So, would Dave Ramsey recommend filing for bankruptcy? Dave Ramsey's website has hundreds of articles listing the ways that you can better your financial life. From investing in real estate to creating a beans and rice meal plan, there are countless articles advising readers on how they can live a life of financial freedom. So what does Dave Ramsey have to say about bankruptcy? Well, in short, Dave Ramsey recommends bankruptcy being literally your last option, as in sell everything you ever have owned before filing bankruptcy, last option. Why? Well, according to Ramsey, there's not really a bigger financial blunder than filing for bankruptcy. In fact, Dave Ramsey has said that it's a devastating and life-altering event that he would avoid recommending at any cost. While it can be a helpful debt relief tool, Ramsey says that the effects, emotional, physical, mental, financial, etc., will stay with you a lifetime. He also says that many people jump into bankruptcy way too quickly before they even need to. Because of this, Ramsey advises you to do everything you can before getting up in front of a judge and declaring you are unable to pay debts back. Having filed for bankruptcy himself, Ramsey can attest to the fact that the ramifications of bankruptcy are far-reaching. He recalls in many of his videos and podcasts that the feeling of abject hopelessness he felt when filing for bankruptcy and how hard it was to even emotionally recover from that time in his life. So what does Dave Ramsey suggest you do instead? Well, his website lists 6 things that you can do to prevent yourself from having to file for bankruptcy. So let's go through that now. Let's touch on some of the Dave Ramsey's 6 steps to avoid bankruptcy. These aren't 6 different options that you can do instead of filing for bankruptcy. Instead, these are 6 steps that will get you where you want to be. I think it's important to mention here that this advice will not work for every situation. If you're potentially facing homelessness or can't find a way to even feed your family, bankruptcy right away might be the best option. Please consider your unique situation before taking advice from anyone. However, if you're not in a place where you'd have to file for bankruptcy immediately, consider doing these steps to avoid filing bankruptcy. So let's go through them. First, you want to take care of the 4 walls first. What Dave Ramsey means is you need to make sure your basics are taken care of. The 4 walls include your 4 basic things to survive: food, utilities, shelter, and transportation. Ramsey says that taking care of these 4 things are a must before you begin paying off anything else. If you don't have food, water, electricity, and shelter, and there's no way you can get out of the debt, and if you don't have any form of transportation, there's no way you can keep the other 3 things available, all 4 walls have to be taken care of first, no exceptions. Now, this doesn't mean you need the best, newest, shiniest form of transportation. It can simply mean making sure you have a bus pass. It may be hard, but you're going to have to make lifestyle sacrifices in order to avoid bankruptcy. Second, sell everything in sight. This is a piece of advice that Ramsey lived out. When he and his wife filed for bankruptcy, they ended up selling absolutely everything that they had and any sort of monetary value. This may be extreme, but Ramsey pushes back, noting that bankruptcy is just as extreme, if not more. So if you have old DVDs, furniture, books, school supplies, boats, or whatever else lying around, sell them. This can help you scrape together enough cash to either keep the four walls up or start paying off your debt. 3, live on a bare bones budget. If you're at the point of considering filing for bankruptcy, you're at the point where your budget cannot handle any kind of excess or luxury. This means getting rid of a lot more than you might realize. It means canceling cable, streaming services, or potentially even losing your cell phone. It means absolutely no eating out, especially at sit-down restaurants. This also means a change in your day-to-day lifestyle. Are you accustomed to getting your hair done every few weeks? Not anymore. Car detailed every time it gets money? No. Only buying ultra organic food from farmers market because that's the aesthetic? Well, that's unfortunately going to have to wait. Bare bones budget means you are buying generic products that are cheap and can keep you full and energized. Dave Ramsey usually calls this the beans and rice and beans diet. Again, it may feel extreme, but he wants to prevent you from filing bankruptcy. 4th, getting a second job. Even one smaller second stream of income can greatly reduce your need to file for bankruptcy. Having a couple hours off in the afternoon or even evening, great. Use that time to deliver pizzas, working in an office, or even doing something else that pulls in more additional income. But all this extra income should not be going towards your personal budget. However, it should actually be going directly to your creditors. Getting a second job can mean sacrificing time with your friends, even your family. But it's important to remember that this is for a good cause and it's only for a specific season. If it can get your family out of the debt sooner, it actually may be worth the lost time. 5th, don't fall for debt settlement or consolidation tricks. Oftentimes when you're in extreme desperation because of your situation, you may be more perceptive to common debt relief selling techniques. If you have a company pitch their services to you, you may be thinking, that sounds amazing. The problem of having your total debt amount decreased is a dream. However, at the end of the process, you may very well wish you were only dreaming. The amount of fees that you'll have to pay to these companies is outrageous, and it can often outweigh the amount of debt that actually was forgiven, leaving you paying more than you started out with. Instead, trust the process. Work hard, pay off your debts, and you'll be able to survive without all those gimmicks promised by a shady debt settlement company. We would like to point out that Dave Ramsey has a pretty strict policy when it comes to outside or working with any outside entities to either purchase items or to get relief from debt like I was referring to there. His motto specifically is to never use credit cards, to never use a loan, or debt settlement consolidation companies like I was referring to. We don't necessarily agree with this though. Just like there are ways that credit cards can be helpful if used correctly, we think that there are in fact some debt relief companies that actually can offer you a solution for your overwhelming debt. It is, however, super important that you are incredibly thorough in your research if you decide to work with a debt